Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to be going over the new Rugged Suppressors Universal 3-Lug Mount, also called the RU3. I am also going to do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison with the more traditional style Bixler 3-Lug, which is the Thundercans. Some of you may not know the difference between these Bixler-Style 3-lug adapters and the spring-loaded ones. I will discuss that more in depth on the back end of this video. So if you're interested in seeing that, stick around. But for the first part, I'm just going to talk about the Rugged itself, and in comparison to the Thundercans, and how they kind of stack up against each other. So as of January 2026, Rugged did release this mount. A couple weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago at this point, as their spin on the Bixler-Style mount. Bixler-Style screw down. They're not spring-loaded whatsoever. And it caught my interest because I recently got familiar with the Thundercans version, and I got to say, while the operation of it, the function of it, is super solid, super tight, I'm not a big fan of how it looks aesthetically. I do suspect that other people may have the same type of feelings on that. So I think that that's kind of what really grabbed the attention of people who see the new Rugged, who want something that's a little bit more compact and are willing to give up a little bit of internal volume in their suppressor. All right, so first things first, as you see, there is definitely a big size difference in between them. If I were to line them up edge to edge to where the can meets, and these are both hub mounts, by the way, I should have started off with that. As you see, going from end to end, the give and take that you will have for internal volume and then external extension coming off the back end of your can. Pretty pronounced, right? I mean, you see that the Thundercans, the more traditional Bixler style, it does protrude quite a bit out the back, which in turn will give you more length on your overall setup from barrel to muzzle end or end of the can. Some of the give that you're going to have there is that going at the top end here, you're going to see that you're going to give up internal volume. Now, I am not a mathematician and can tell you by dimensions how much internal volume that you're going to be giving up. And you see, it's nothing crazy. I would question if you would even be able to tell the difference by ear. I could probably tell you, without even having shot this one yet, I probably, in the time that it would take to switch out mounts on the same can to keep things the same, I can almost guarantee you that I'm not going to be able to hear the difference in between them. The other big difference between them is the way that they lock down. With traditional Bixlers, you do have a locking collar, you do have a taper mount here. Basically, you end up loosening this up and then tightening it down onto the 3-lug adapter or 3-lug muzzle device. With the Rugged, it is all just one attached piece. There is no collar. There's nothing that has to loosen up. As you see here, it does have an open hash mark there for a point of reference, but outside of that, there is no collar to back off like you do have here with the more traditional Bixler. So comparing those two on a gun here, I have my AKV. I do have a Rugged 3-lug adapter and 9mm. Of course, both of these are 9mm, are not cross-compatible with 45 or 10mm. You would back the collar off enough, which you see is right there. That is the bare minimum of unthreading that I can do to allow it to grab onto the back of the lugs of the 3-lug muzzle device. And basically, you would just tighten this thing down until it solidifies, right? And imagine that there's a can on here. So how is that different from the Rugged? Something else to take note of here is the internal volume. As you notice, you can see right down in here, you see the end of the muzzle device. So as far as internal volume is concerned, the muzzle device and the 3-lug, it does not take up any extra room inside of your can. As you imagine, the can would thread down to the base right here, and you pretty much will be maximizing all of the internal volume of your blast chamber in your can that you pretty much physically could. Now for the new Rugged Bixler mount, as you see, it does have the hatch mark like I mentioned, showing you that it's open. One solid design. You're going to slide it on. Let me do it so you can see the open. Once it slips on and catches, You just tighten it down. And then you're going to notice that the hash line for the open is now closed. So similar like I showed with the Thundercans, the internal volume here, the 3-lug muzzle device itself does not protrude into the blast chamber any deeper than what you would get or what the adapter does itself. But, you know, in comparison wise to the Thundercans, you are giving up the internal volume by that much. So I know one of the downsides of the Bixler-Style mounts is considering that you have to thread it down to lock it up positively. It's not as quick as the spring-loaded type. So kind of to show you how, in comparison to the Thundercans, how many turns it takes to tighten it on, I'm going to go ahead and grab it right here. Use this as like a center line, and I'm going to turn the rotations till my thumb hits my weapon light, and it'll illustrate how many turns it takes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7. Now to do the same thing with the Thundercans. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6. Sorry, a little back and forth action there. So 6. So the traditional Bixler-Style, made by Thundercans here, it is less rotations to tighten down than the rugged, though not really by much. All right, so now let's do a little bit of weight comparison with the Thundercans traditional style Bixler. We're looking at 3.4 ounces, and with the new rugged, 2.2, so about 1.1 ounces of weight saving by going with the rugged. All right, so to touch base now on the build materials, can't find a lot of information out there. The one source that I could find to say that this was black anodized, and I can tell just kind of by the tapping on the material that this is probably definitely aluminum, and then having the black anodized hard coat on top of that. You know, you can't anodize steel, but for the insert and where the taper lock is, based on the weight of this and the color, and also having a rugged obsidian 9 with their heat treat process that gives us this gold color, if I were to base it on that, on the obsidian 9, I would say that the taper mount part is made out of 17.4 stainless that's been heat treated. For the Thundercan, in my quick Google search, couldn't find materials on this either. I would just say that almost guaranteed that the locking nut here is aluminum. And then also based on the weight here, I would guess that this is also stainless steel as well. I don't know if it's 17.4, but it has a little bit of heft to it. And then also based on the color. Some other features on it, as you see here, there are wrench flats, which you can very, very faintly see at the top edge here. And then over here, that if you need to put a wrench on it in order to break it loose the torque, or even to torque it onto a can, you have something that you can grab onto. But what would work even handier than that is they do include this tool here, which you can see here. You can put a socket on the back of it. When you go to mount this on your can, these teeth here would engage down in here, which will allow you to put a torque wrench to get the applied torque that you need in order to lock it down to your can. So I would probably say that these wrench flats here are based more for if you're trying to break it loose off the muzzle device in the event that it does get a little bit over tight. You will notice that there is also wrench flats on the inside surface here. So if this was locked on to your muzzle device, you twisted your can off, it does give you something that you can grab onto with a tool in order to break that loose, something a little bit more secure than this little thin edge that you have for wrench flats there. In comparison to that, the Thundercans, you can see has wrench flats all around it, a little bit thin. I think that it would be a bit easier. Well, I know it's a bit easier to torque the rugged 3-lug down by being able to put a socket on there than it is to try to get your crow's foot onto the Thundercan. So definitely pretty handy that's included with that. It makes it a bit easier to do torquing operations. In addition to that, I guess, not maybe totally needed. If you get this seized up and your cam breaks loose, I mean, obviously, again, you do have wrench flats. You do have more gripping surface than you do with the rugged in regards to the base. But not, in my opinion, and I haven't had to deal with it yet, won't be as simple or as easy or get as much purchase with the tool as you will when using the rugged 3-lug mount. And then final point to touch on between these two is going to be price. The Thundercans, they go for 170 bucks when you can find them in stock. When I started looking for these Bixler mounts, fortunately for me, I only had to wait a couple days for Shaw Armament to get them back in stock. But like I said, $169.99, $5 shipping, and it'll be 175 bucks. Whereas the new rugged RU3, I bought this from Tombstone Tactical. It cost me about $105 before shipping. I did see on Primary Arms, right before I clicked on to make this video, I noticed that they have these for $118. So pretty big price differential between the two. And as of this moment, couldn't find anywhere where I can still find one of these Thundercans, Bixler mounts. Multiple places where you can find these rugged mounts. Interestingly enough, though, you go on the rugged website, and I know a few days ago you could buy them directly from there. If you wanted to pay the higher price of the 150 bucks from them, now it says that they're out of stock. Like I mentioned, they were on Primary Arms, and I did get this from Tombstone Tactical just a few days ago. So that's it for the overview of the rugged itself, and also in comparison to the Shaw Armament, difference between the two Bixler style mounts. If you are curious, you're newer to 3-lug mounting, and you want to learn a little bit more about how they compare to the spring-loaded types, keep on watching the video. Everybody else, appreciate you up to this point. Big favor to ask of you guys, if you would hit the like and subscribe button, share this video as much as you can, and then we're going to see you in the next one. All right, so now moving on to the second part of the video, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about how Bixler style mounts compare to probably today is the more common spring-loaded type. So, I do want to point out that, obviously talked about the Thundercans and the rugged. What I do have here is the new Resilient Gen 2 titanium 3-lug. This is a spring-loaded type, but it is hub compatible. So the outside threads of it will work with any hub compatible can. The two that I have here, I do have the Silencer Co. and I do have the rugged Alpha thread style, which are going to be a little bit smaller in diameter. So not a direct apples to apples comparison, but by function, pretty much the same. So you saw in the first half of the video, you see how the Bixler style type attach. I am going to go into more detail on that, but I want to kind of touch base first on the more common, which you see today, spring-loaded type. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to illustrate that here with my Streetbog SP45A3. The 3 lugs, the adapters and the muzzle devices are not the same when it comes to 9mm and 45, but the functions are going to be the same. So as you see here, I got my Omega 45K. I've got my Silencer Co. 45 cal 3-lug mount. So the way that the more common spring-loaded 3-lug adapters work, as you see here, they're called 3 lugs because there's 3 lugs, 1, 2, 3. As you see on the end here, you can see the opening there where the lugs are going to mount up. Nice and quick and simple. Simply line up the grooves in the lugs, press down, and it springs forward and locks. And it does that. And what I have here is the same version of the Silencer Co., but in 9mm. This one here is a self-contained unit. I think it's probably for illustrative purposes a little easier to see here with the rugged version. This where you do have a mount and a taper that locks onto the shoulder of the 3-lug mount here. The way that it's secured is under the spring tension. So inside of the can, you're going to have the end of the blast baffle. The spring is going to push positive pressure onto the lugs or onto the adapter here, so that when you do press it down and then lock it and it springs loose, it's going to hold that firmly in place. Now, I should say that it's going to be somewhat firmly. So as you notice here, once you get the can attached, let me tighten it up a little bit. there is always a little bit of wiggle room that you're going to have, a little bit of rotational movement, and that's pretty normal when it comes to 3-lugs. You will also have a little bit of wiggle room. That's pretty much normal too. Obviously, you don't want to have too much. Now, where you tend to run into problems with this type of 3-lug mount is there are varying tolerances between manufacturers of 3-lug muzzle devices and the adapters themselves. So the HK, they're the ones that started off with the 3-lug mounting pattern. Depending on your adapter, depending on your 3-lug mount, you may have more or less rotational wiggle, which again isn't the biggest deal, as much as you're going to have the little bit of side-to-side wiggle that you see here. So let's talk about some of the cons to the spring-loaded type 3-lug adapter. So like I had mentioned in the first part of the video, with these type of units here, you are giving up some internal volume of your can there. By having this threaded here, you have all of this that's protruding into the can and taking up room inside of the can to potentially suppress more sound, more gas that's going to equal into sound. Some are more, some are less, depending on the mount. My only experiences with these spring-loaded mounts is going to be with the Silencer Co type, and then also the rugged type. As you can see here, when you compare the two together, different design. This design here is fully encapsulated. It does have wrench flats here that you can unscrew and pull the assembly apart, whereas with the rugged, it is 3 separate pieces. You do have the locking piece. You can see down there the back side of that, where that attaches to the back side of the lugs of the muzzle device. This simply slips down into here, and then you have a spring, and then it's going to tighten down into the can. This does share the same thread pitch, which is alpha, so I can use it to illustrate how that goes down in here. So you're going to be giving up some of that internal volume. I think that, looking at this, the rugged design does give up a little bit less internal volume than you're going to get with the Silencer Co. Take up the spring there. I don't know, it may equal out, but again, with this spring-loaded type, you are going to be giving up that internal volume. Some of the other cons that you're going to have is that there can be issues when it comes to the spring load. So you do want to keep these kind of greased up, and sometimes you can run into issues when it comes to binding, spring binding, and then also be affected by the heat that builds up. So kind of looking at the resilient design here, I'm not going to break this one loose because I already have it rock setted and torqued. I'm sure I can find some stock footage or stock image online to show you what it looks like when it's not attached to a can. But I will tell you that the resilient 3-lug is pretty similar to the Silencer Co, where it's a self-contained unit. It doesn't come apart like you see here with the rugged. So if you use the traditional spring-loaded side type, you are going to want to keep an eye to make sure there's a level of maintenance and cleaning that is done in order to ensure that this thing is staying true, and that it's not happening to get seized up in any type of way that which may cant your can, which may potentially lead into baffle strikes or end cap strikes. Price-wise, typically 3-lug adapters, they're around the same ballpark. It goes from 120 to up to 150 or so if you were to get the resilient here, maybe even a little bit more than that. But again, being super quick to get on and get off the gun, that is definitely the benefit of the spring-loaded. Again, you have a little bit of wiggle room that's normal. The way this works, with the inertia of the bullet coming out, kind of wants to pull the can off the end, which maintains that positive lock there. There is a taper, as I mentioned. You can see the taper on the end there that locks up to the shoulder of the lugs of the muzzle device, but it's not getting pulled down quite as firm to maintain perfect concentricity. I think it makes some people nervous having that little bit of wiggle room there that you are going to end up hurting your can. But this design has been around forever. For the most part, it's pretty solid. You're most likely not going to have issues unless you have an issue with your spring, unless you have a really out of whack muzzle device, or maybe your muzzle device is at the small end of the tolerances, and then the adapter you get is made to the top end of the tolerances, allows a lot more slack. But you are going to be plenty good for the most part when it comes to these, though there can potentially be some problems. All right, so now when it comes to Bixler style mounts and how they differ. So, you saw in the first part of the video that it uses a rotational tightening to get it to stay secured to the muzzle device. It does that, and I'm going to show you here. You see on the back side of here, there's cutouts that are going to engage the back of the lugs of your muzzle device. In addition to that, when you look here, you have a pretty good taper shoulder that's going to engage with the tapered front part of the lugs of your 3-lug device. So essentially, as you tighten this down to your muzzle device, which, there we go. Once you tighten this down, which I'll just show you here, essentially what happens is the nut, if you want to call this the nut, which would be this piece on the Thundercan, it is tightening down and pulling in, forcing the taper onto the taper of the shoulders to keep it as concentric as it can possibly get mechanically. And then the backside is locking onto these lugs here as you tighten it down to keep things super, super solid. So once you get it locked down, you now pull it down to the taper, along with the nut on the back, pulling it tight against the lugs to give you a super, super solid lockup. Again, keeping things as concentric as they can possibly be. And then with this being the way that it pulls itself in, there is zero slop when it comes to this. You tighten it down by hand. Once you have it attached to your can, you do want to torque the adapter to your can, tighten this thing down, and just do it by hand, and then just give it and snug it down. And that's all you need. From my experience of shooting with at least the Thundercan's version, doesn't even begin to come loose at all. And it, again, gives you that peace of mind that everything's concentric, everything is super locked tight. And then when you go to break it loose, just break it loose by hand. Don't need any tools, don't need to torque it down quite that hard. In the event that it does break loose, again, you can in turn, if your can breaks loose, I should say, you do have methods of being able to remove the adapter itself, regardless of what style mount that you're using here, between the more traditional Bixler and then the new rugged. Mounting speed wise, as you see, right now this thing is tightened down all the way. If I want to break this thing loose, it takes about that long to get it on and off. And to get it tightened back down again, definitely nowhere near as close as it would take for you to use a spring-loaded type. You see here, all you got to do with this is get it to line up, lock it down, and then you're good to go. So you're giving up speed a little bit in favor of more stability, and then maybe peace of mind. So that's kind of the give and take between the Bixler-Style and then the spring-loaded type. So in summary, overall, 3-lug, awesome way to go when you're running a PCC. I do also have a couple 22 long rifle setups that I use 3-lug on, because I do use my rugged Obsidian 9 on that. Works just as good. You can take it apart for cleaning, so it's safe to shoot rimfire through it. I love 3-lug. Now, choosing between the Bixler and the spring-loaded, there's pros and there's cons and there's trade-offs. You want something that's definitely a bit more rock-solid mounting and with stability, making sure you can be as concentric as possibly can be. You're probably going to want to go with the Bixler. The Bixler also maximizes your chamber volume, or the volume inside your can. Obviously the rugged, you're giving up a little bit on that, or the new rugged hub mount here. You want to go the spring-loaded type, you're going to have speed. You're gonna have speed, super fast on, super fast off. You know, up to you to decide whether how important that is to you or not. But you know, there's going to be a little bit small risk that you're gonna have to stay in front of to ensure that you don't have any type of baffle strikes or end strikes. Though I would tell you that that's going to be a little bit fewer and far between. So again, pros and cons of both. I would encourage you to try both out and see what you like. I know the different setups that I have with different 3-lug mounting. I can see some would be better with the Bixler and some are going to be better with the spring-loaded. But that's it. That about wraps it up. I hope that helped clear up some questions maybe that people may have for 3-lug mounting, especially when it comes to the difference between the two. I feel like I'm seeing more and more on the forums where people are, raving about the Bixler-Style, even though it's absolutely nothing new whatsoever. And then especially with the release of the new rugged RU3. So again, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get notifications for when I release new videos. Share this video as much as you can. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, helps the channel out quite a bit. We see you in the next one.